Hey everybody, welcome back. Dustin Schmidt here, and today I'm going to talk about 3 different key lights. Let's get started. So the first light I want to talk about today is the Aputure 120D Mark II. This light's been out for a couple years. A lot of people use it as a key light for basic talking head interview stuff. I like it for that. I've used it quite a bit, through softboxes, bounced off, various reflectors, things like that. I've used it through a 6x6 silk, bounced it off a 6x6, ultra bounce. So it's got enough output that it works really well for one person talking head stuff, kind of like I'm doing right now. But the thing about the 120D Mark II that I don't necessarily like is that it has a lot of parts. It's got 2 cables, it's got a power supply, and then it's got the head. Now it packs down pretty small, so it's not terribly difficult. It's pretty quick to set up. But one of the things that it doesn't do is it doesn't pack easily, let's say into a backpack or a carry-on or something like that. It starts to get just a little too big. And I don't do a ton of gigs like that, but when you do, it's nice to have something a little bit smaller. So I wanted to compare that light to a Light Motion Stella Pro 5000, which is an incredibly small light. Fits kind of in the palm of your hand, really, and doesn't have a separate power supply. It just has a very small cable with a little power brick, power inverter. So it works really well. It's probably only about this big, I'll show it to you here in a sec. But that's a light that can easily fit in a backpack and has enough punch, through a 4x4, bounced off like a 4x4 source. I've actually put it into a 6x6 before. One of the things I wanted to see with the Light Motion Stella Pro 5000 is how does that compare to an Aputure 120D Mark II? Because of the small size of the Light Motion, is that a 1-to-1 swap to where I can, when I'm just really limited on space, can I just bring that light? And then the third light that I want to check out that is super interesting to me is the Hive Hornet 200C. And the Hive Hornet 200C is a full RGB light. So it has every color in the spectrum, full range of white from, I have to check the specs, but it's like, 2600 up to like 8000 or something crazy like that. So you can get a lot of different range there. And is also smaller than the 120D Mark II, which is kind of the benchmark that I'm comparing against. And so I wanted to see, even with all the full RGB capabilities, which a lot of times can really cut down on your output, is that light possibly a replacement for the 120D Mark II? And so I'm also going to test that light. And it's also a very small light. The Hive Hornet 200C is a very small light. It's basically just a tube that is the size of a Pro Photo. So you can put all Pro Photo mounts on it, slides directly on, and it's the perfect diameter for Pro Photo stuff. So that's pretty interesting too. And it has just a slightly larger power inverter. Doesn't have a totally separate power supply like the 120D Mark II. Has a pretty good app for it, which is really nice. So you can control the full color spectrum of the Hive Hornet 200C. And the Hive Hornet 200C is actually what's lighting me right now. I've just got that through a reasonably large octabox over here. And the thing that's cool about the Hornet 200C is that you can, has a bunch of range just for skin tones. I'll probably do a totally separate review on the Hive Hornet 200C here at some point. But for now, for the purposes of this review, I wanted to see how do these 3 lights stack up against each other, running at 100% power, which is typically, where I want to play at, just so I can see how much room I have on my aperture. And so we're going to run some tests, and we're just going to go through a couple different f-stops here and see how much punch these lights have. We're shooting raw on the Canon C300 Mark III at 800 native ISO, no ND applied, cinema gamut, C-Log 2. We're going to do a standard Rec 709 to wide DR, just the Canon LUT dropped on there. No extreme color grading. I'm not going to normalize the exposures. I'm just going to let that play out so you can see the range of how much room we have. Right now, the key setup here is just a 4x4 white foam core. About an arm's length off camera is the light, and it's bouncing into a 4x4 white foam core that's probably about 5.5 feet away. Just off this direction of camera, you know, looking this way as if we're doing an interview, and just seeing what that does. A 4x4 is a decently large, so that's what we're going with for this. I've just got a gray, you know, a medium gray backdrop here behind me, so you can also get a sense of what that light's doing and how it's falling off. But we will be consistent across these. I'm going to put my key light in the same spot each time. And first up, we've got the Aputure 120D Mark II running at 100%, and let's show you what that looks like. And here we are at f1.8. And here we are at f2.8. And here we are at f4. And here we are at f5.6. And here we are at f8. And here we are at f10. And that's the Aputure 120D Mark II. And that was the Aputure 120D Mark II. Next up, we've got the Hive Hornet 200C. And let me show you what that looks like. And here's the Hornet 200C at f1.8. And at f2.8. And here it is at f4. And here it is at f5.6. And here it is at f8. And here it is at f10. And that was the Hive Hornet 200C. And then our last light is the Light Motion Stella Pro 5000. And let's see what that looks like. So this is f1.8. And here we are at f2.8. And here we are at f4. And here we are at f5.6. And here we are at f8. And here we are at f10. So there's how all three lights stack up. Hopefully you could see a little bit of the differences there. The Aputure 120D Mark II definitely has the most output. It's just a little bit more than our Hive Hornet 200C, but it's pretty close. And then the Light Motion Stella Pro 5000 comes in third out of those lights. Really what I think I've learned from doing these tests is that the Hive Hornet 200C for me is probably going to be my go-to as an indoor key light for a one-person interview. It's got way more range in terms of the color that you can do. The Aputure 120D Mark II is daylight only. You can gel it and do some things there, but then of course you're carrying around a bunch more stuff. The Hive's got a great app that you can use. It's got a huge range and a huge like versatility, and it's smaller. So you can put the Hive in a backpack pretty easily with just a simple reflector and be able to bounce that off some stuff pretty easily. The Light Motion Stella Pro 5000 has the least output out of the three, but is definitely the smallest. So huge plus there. I know that I can at least shoot pretty shallow, you know, at a 1.8 easily, with probably even 2 stops of ND with the Light Motion, and be able to get a good exposure there. So when I need to travel really, really light, it's probably going to be the Light Motion. Also has a built-in battery. So in the event that you really need to travel light and you know an interview is not going to take longer than an hour and a half, you could bring the Light Motion for that. So pretty interesting test, a lot of fun for me to do. And also 3 lights that I don't see out there very often. The Aputure 120D Mark II has been reviewed time and time again, but the Hornet 200C I have not seen very much information about, and the Light Motion Stella Pro 5000 I have definitely not seen reviewed too often, a couple times here and there. Hopefully this was helpful. If you like what you saw, leave a comment, hit me up, ask any questions you have, and see you next time. Thanks.